Bonjour Mes Amis, welcome to the fifth video of this series on my opinions, theories and perspective on the story of the game Claire Obscure Expedition 33. The usual disclaimers apply. You know the gig by now, right? Spoilers ahead and a verbal reminder that any content warnings from the game also apply here. Welcome to level -4 of my descent into the abyss. Today we will be discussing mirrors, arts and objects, and how these things relate to Claire Obscure. I might need to move houses at this rate. My last video didn't do too well, and posting on Reddit, I didn't get a single upvote, and my comments were downvoted into the abyss. But by some fluke, I landed on the perfect upvote ratio. I guess the moral of the story is Verso is a very sensitive subject, but I digress. Full steam ahead on our descent into obsession, or is it madness now? I believe there are multiple references to this, but being short on time, I don't have them all in front of me. I 100% shot myself in the foot here, but you do learn from your mistakes. But the main one is from Painted Alicia's letter, which states this canvas world is a mirror to the one outside, which is great, as it's right there in front of you, but it's not the only reason I believe the canvas world is a mirror of the one outside. Let's start with Lumiere. It's a perfect copy of the city outside the Descendant family live in. It mirrors the outside world in a literal sense, by design from Aline's hands. We know from journals exploring Lumiere itself and the environment on the continent that original or pre-fracture Lumiere was quite technologically advanced, which would suggest that knowledge from the original world was shared with the people of Lumiere. They had cars, flying vehicles and whatnot. Why mirror these technologies in the canvas? It's not like Aline was visiting other cities on the continent. Why did Lumiere need all these creations? Would it not have been more preferential for Lumiere to be less technologically advanced so that inhabitants would not leave the city? There is an element of risk Aline is adding. What if Painted Verso gets in a car crash or boards a vehicle which crashes? If she then uses her painted powers to intervene, she would break her immersion. Why share knowledge unless she expects something from the people in return? From the same journals, we know that the painted people in Lumiere are quite creative. Each expedition tries a unique way of solving the same problem, some more successfully than others. Though ironically, it's Expedition 60 who used no technology that got the furthest from past expeditions. In stark contrast to what you would expect, but maybe I'm going on a tangent here. The red and white tree in the heart of Lumiere is a mirror to who controls the chroma of the canvas, showing a balance between the two. It's also what I would call a mystical object in the world. It's not just a normal tree, it's a magical tree. As I mentioned in my last video, being inspired by control, I would class things as objects of power, basically something with mystical abilities. Though oddly, after the cutscene they change back to a mix of red and white. So I'm not sure if it's meant to stay red, or if it's reverting back means something. It also nicely leads into what I would call the duality of the world. The white and red symbolize life and death. The name of the game is Claire Obscure, a painting technique which blends in light and dark elements to create bold contrasts. There are plenty of bold contrasts in the game. Let's start with opposites. There is a spherical moon in the canvas, which you can see with the new free camera from camp, and it mirrors the moon in the real world. You don't really need a moon in this world, just as you don't need stars, but you can see stars in the distance. It did make me think how far you can go in terms of height. Are there actual objects far away in the sky, or is it just a painted ceiling? The simple answer is we just don't know. What is interesting is the concept of day and night, in direct contrast to another world, which is the canvas world. You don't really need day and night because it's a flat plane, but somehow it works. And then in contrast to the moon, you have the sun. Not the midnight sun behind the monolith, but an actual sun, which has sun rays reaching you. During this day you have the sun, and the night you have the moon, but we don't know where they go. Alternatively, so where is the moon during the day? And where is the sun during the night? How do they disappear? How do they reappear? These are all unknowns. Feel free to comment if you have any theories. Now, this contrast extends to living beings as well. You have the Gestrels, brave creatures who love fighting and trading, yet are also fun loving and adventurous. We run into many small merchant Gestrels who are quite mighty and can transform into giants in combat. That does catch you off guard the first time around, as you don't really expect it. Now, when you go to the Gestrel village, you see Titan like Gestrels in the background, and then small children sized Gestrels. The contrast in height is jarring. On the opposite side of the spectrum, or should I say in direct contrast to the Gestrels, you have the Grandee, who look imposing and have a physical presence but are perhaps the weakest species in the canvas in terms of combat ability. They used to live up high in the mountains, so they aren't dumb. You could say they are smart, but not smart at the same time. You also have the Neverons who mirror their surroundings. You have the Gestrel, and Frozen Hearts mention this, when you enter the area and are facing two giant stalags facing one another, which is interesting that they choose to inhabit areas that resemble themselves or mirror their essence, I suppose. I'm all over the place in this video. I guess I'm just covering different areas which are interconnected. You have the Gestrel at Frozen Hearts mention this when you enter the area and are facing two giant stalags facing one another, which is interesting that they choose to inhabit areas that resemble themselves or mirror their essence, I suppose. I'm all over the place in this video, sorry. I guess I'm just covering different areas which are interconnected, but perhaps I'm not the best at expressing it. I will link this bit with art and artists to explain what I mean. The canvas is painted by painters, a type of artist, right? But the main art or craft of the people inside the canvas isn't painting. In Lumiere, you might get why this is, right? As the paintress is seen as the source of everyone's troubles. You can only run into one guy in the introduction willing to paint, who makes an amazing portrait of Gustav and Sophie, but that's an anomaly. You see a lot more discarded or badly treated canvases in the square. But it's the same with the Gestrel, Grandee, and even Neverons. Going on a limb here, what if the goal of the canvas was to combine all arts and powers or leverage other artistic powers to make painting powers stronger? I touched on this in my last video about Verso. You see, the library in the banner is hidden beyond the kitchen and storage space, almost like spies would hide their spies. Maybe Verso was trying to master or mix writing powers into painting powers. I don't think this mix is limited to just Verso. Seems like something Aline is pushing for. To mix other artists' powers and grow stronger. Why do I pin it on Aline? She is the one who sought out Renoir and taught him how to paint. Most likely Renoir was from a different artistic faction, given his want for control and the way he builds the axons. The Tower of the Reacher and Verso's interest in trains. It makes the most sense Renoir would have some kind of engineering or architectural background. This beautifully links into my theme of the canvas being a mirror, because you meet this kind Gestrel who is an engineer. Interestingly, you first meet the Gestrels at Monaco Station. Somewhere in this world needed to have maintaining the train tracks. Someone in this world needed to be maintaining the train tracks. Before the fracture, before Aline, when real Verso used to play in this canvas, it makes sense that the original creatures, the Grandee, would have been the ones in charge of this. But the Gestrels are not limited to engineers. They have a grasp of sound, maybe some musical know-how. They use sounds to distract Neverons, and were the ones who made the bell Monaco uses. Music is also a big part of the game. The soundtrack is legendary. And you have the trumpet or trombone Neveron. There is also the white Neveron of the same kind who wants to play just to enjoy music and not for killing. There is also the record player you have at camp. This is also, in my eyes, an object of power, and perhaps the strongest object of power in the game. It is constant across all campsites. It doesn't matter where you camp. This will always be there. I don't think it can be stored as a Pictos either, as all the records have Pictos drawn on them, and they're all separate. Now, it's unlikely the characters are carrying something this big around all the time, and it doesn't make sense how they find records littered around the canvas either. But my personal theory is that the characters don't fully remember the record player. The record player influences the character to find its records for it, and the object of power will only be fully complete once all the records in the world have been found. But then, how do you have records spread across the canvas? And what do the picture signs on them mean? What if the canvas spawns these records as a reflection of the real world? Only the characters with the canvas can interact with them, and once it's completed, perhaps its powers will be strong enough to allow painters to exercise power in the real world or something crazy like that, which is a separate theory of mine for a future video. But that implies the canvas was created with the goal to complete this object of power. It makes sense that a lot of chroma would be needed and it would need to be refined over a very long time. Or maybe I'm just reading too much into a fun mechanic, but hey, in my very first video, I did mention I was an overthinker, and I wouldn't be doing this series if I wasn't. You may have noticed the record player in the thumbnail. This was one of my first thoughts from playing the game, which is why it has a special place there. But the icing on the cake, which really stunned me, which I'm sharing so you don't think I'm a guy wearing a tinfoil hat, is the scene where Mael remembers her birth. In the background, lo and behold, what do you see? A gramophone, which looks very similar to the one at camp. I'm not sure if it's something linked to Mael or why the devs inserted it here. Unlike others, the Sandfall team do everything with a purpose, so its appearance here means something. It's just trying to understand what that message is. Whilst we are still on the topic of music, Lune plays the guitar. I believe during a camp scene you can make her play a song that she has been working on, and then in the Cyrene area, when you go and find the resting place of her parents, she plays music to open the doors to get inside. Verso plays the piano, and some random gestural plays the guitar. There are pianos littered around Lumiere and the canvas. You see Kid Verso playing the piano. Mael and Painted Verso jointly play the piano. In the manor, we also find a harp in Claire's room. You then remember as she paints the Neverons and she made the trombone Neveron, so she must understand the essence of music. In the manor, we also see a violin and an accordion. I believe that's the name for it, the red instrument you see on the counter. Music as an art is a big part of the canvas, but music isn't the only art form in the canvas either. You have sculpting and puppetry too. There is Estelle, who creates the sculpture of Esquier in Lumiere. There are the statues of Verso and Renoir at the harbour. Claire uses sculptures to practice the Neverons, as you find in the manor. But equally, she doesn't directly get involved in the canvas if she can help it. She is playing chess, moving her pawns, namely the Neverons, to assist Renoir, a puppet master, watching events unfold. On a literal note, she overrode Painted Claire's will, turned her into a puppet, and emotionally manipulated Simon, almost making him into her own puppet. You also have the grandee outside Monaco Station, one of which whom questions why all gestrels make the same statues, and the historian has something to say about it. Then you have the mimes, which are an art form in and of themselves, but linked closely to puppetry, so have an honourable mention here. I guess mimes do fit into performance art, where Gustav's act of skipping stones, the Ferris wheel, and the merry-go-round might also fall under, but that's more of a vague category. I haven't highlighted that here. What is a bigger category is dancing. You have a literal dancing axon, Serene, who links into singing too. Maybe an overlap with music here, as she sings. Interestingly, Mael says she's recognizing this dance, which hints that Aline does the same dance. After all, Renoir needed inspiration from somewhere to make the axon. Lune makes the doors dance in the Serene area to find her parents' resting place by playing music. And speaking of Lune, she has an ability called Lightning Dance. You have the dance you teacher and the apprentices, which are Neverons that love the art of dancing. Back in Lumiere, you have Seal and a group of other people dancing to celebrate the Gommage. You also have the dancing gestrel with Gestrel Village. Even if it's a nod to a meme, a dancing gestrel is a dancing gestrel after all. I covered this with the painting in Lumiere, But that guy making a painting of Gustav and Sophie does so dancing, not fighting, despite the ask to engage in combat with one another. Moving on, we have the art of architecture and engineering, Masters 1, although some may debate whether these are arts, but let's treat them as such for now, in good faith. You have the bent Eiffel Tower as a symbol of Lumiere, the remnants of the Arch of Triumph on the harbour, the manor in all its appearances across the continent. I believe Mael praises the architecture of a building at some point too, which was something else that pushed my theory that Renoir may be an architect or engineer. The whole gestural village being built indicates that the gestrals can build because they escaped from across the continent into this one village. You can see the bridges connecting the upper stories, and they have the Sacaptates as well. I probably butchered the pronunciation of that. But anyway, you get what I'm saying. That they are adventurous in how they build and what they make. They also have this some kind of kite they make. You can see discarded parts littered around the village area. And then back in Lumiere, you have the engineering guild, which Gustav belongs to and teaches apprentices from. The same apprentices who made his new arm after he was disarmed. Sorry, bad dad joke there. It isn't really explained how he lost his original arm, but most likely would have been from the lumina converter, which tries to focus chroma and lumina into a small container. But again, that's a tangent. Let's get back on track. Our next art is fashion. You come across a quirky grandee in Monaco Station who will only fashion clothes for women, and that too only if you answer their questions correctly. You also have different outfits you can equip your character with, and if you remember back in Lumiere, we met a smartly dressed NPC called Richard that taught Sophie how to become a seamstress. Just by looking at the expedition uniforms and the fact it's a French game, fashion is to be taken seriously. If you count the prizes from the gestural beaches, the gestrals also have a fashion aesthetic, not to mention the sacaptates that they make. I'm sure you can get costumes for the same too. I just noticed, but the children from Lumiere seem dressed quite smartly too. As we are speeding along, the next art form of choice is farming and gardening. Now, Gustav mentions aqua farms, but you might see that as more of a survival oriented focus. What is interesting are the gardens on the rooftops. They also form a mirror. No one taught Lumiere to put gardens on their roofs. They were just forced to do it under circumstances. But this perfectly mirrors the top floor of the Descendre Manor, which exists in the real world. There is also a poor gestural who got scammed with the Jack and the Beanstalk, or should I say, Lumiere special vegetable seed scam. As a Nevron, Goblu also shows a love for flowers and attacks the party after you pluck the rose. Closely linked to flowers are photos of flowers. If I was to be a bit cheeky, technically the photo mode is the presence of the art of photography inside the canvas. If you consider the Descendre portrait as a kind of selfie or family photo, that might be pushing it. Moving on to the biggest one, which you probably guessed I was going to say, but I have been delaying it. It is the art of writing. Of course, you have in the outside world the writers as a faction which seem to currently be at war with the painters, and behind the supposed demise of Verso. We also know Mael was somehow involved with them and may have triggered the fire unknowingly and was used by the writers. There is still the typewriter kept in Alicia's room. It hasn't been thrown away after the war, and there is a library inside the Descendre Manor, which surely Alicia wouldn't be able to hide alone, not to mention the stacks of books littered around the manor. Moving inside the canvas, you have at least two gestrals who have written books in the gestural village, although that seems more of a dig at a certain kind of book. I'll take that as it is for now. You also have the gestural who's looking for journals from Lumiere, and who you can share copies of the journal with as you find them. The journals themselves are written by humans from Lumiere. Some official posts from Jennifer, the writer, suggest there are different catalogues within Lumiere, from rhymes to sources of information. Not to mention you meet the newspaper writer Cyril, whom you help with picking a suitable headline. As Gustav, you write in a journal which was gifted by his apprentices. Interestingly, Mael and Verso also seem to write journals, and in a camp scene, Mael critiques Verso's journal writing skills. As to why I only have a single picture on this slide, I'm running out of time and won't make the post if I hunt for more pictures. It doesn't help at all. I've had to upload to the cloud and can't stream from there because of storage woes. Let's get back on track before I get to the heavy art form. Let's have a look at a happier one first. Games. You see the casino in Gestural Village, and there is a separate location with the casino in it. I'm sure, speaking with certain Gestrals, you find the casino was operational pre-fracture. This might be something else mirrored from the real world. The Descendra family seems like an influential family, so they may have properties like shops and casinos of their own. This links into trade. The Descendra family must trade or have merchants working under them, especially as painters spending a lot of time inside canvases. This is mirrored on the Gestrals, who also love trade. It makes sense for the Gestrals to love trading as they can earn chroma and become stronger using it. But we know painfully well the Gestrals also love entertainment, which is why the dreaded beach games exist. I'm sure a few viewers have been traumatized by these abominations. There's different games from obstacle courses, races, to climbing and craft wars. There is also the grandee who asks for his merry-go-round to be fixed, which can be taken as some kind of game or entertainment. That's all I can think of for now, but you also do have the card games in Lumiere. After all, you meet the NPC early on who you can't play a game with as everyone knows they cheat. Now, to tackle the heavy arts, well, I've heard they are classed as arts anyway, the first one being Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Outside the canvas, the Centauri family is at war with the writers. Inside the canvas, it seems like the canvas itself drives fighting and competition naturally. The Gestral love both and have led to some expeditioners having an early homage. The beaches, whilst being a game, are also a form of competition. The grandee also seem to have loved competition, taking part in debates amongst each other. Then you have Lumiere, which of course, being full of humans, could never have been calm. The writer has mentioned that there have been revolutions, and it seems like people were sent on expeditions as punishment. The humans are busy fighting one another for control over Lumiere. You also have the cult, which muddies the water. The final instrument in the art of war is Claire, the one behind the tower, which is the pinnacle of competition and fighting inside the canvas. Claire is also busy with the war outside the canvas and is the instigator of war inside the canvas using the Nevrons. Death should be a release, but Claire uses the Nevrons to prevent the decay of the bodies and their release of chroma, so it's more like torture. The humans, Gestrals, and Grandee are all at war with the Nevrons. Having said that, linked to war is the art of death. Claire doesn't seem to engage in the art of death. If she was, after maximum chaos, she could have wiped out the Gestrals and Grandee living on the continent, who seem to help the humans, or sent wave after wave to attack Lumiere. But it's not a quick resolution she's after. She seems like she wants to fight a war of attrition. On that note, who best fits the art of death but Renoir, who engages the Gommage, wiping out countless year after year? But it's actually Verso who seems to be the strongest user of the art of death, the one who created the Gestrals, who can revive after death. After all, it takes mastery of death to overcome it. Not to mention Monaco, who has an ability to turn into Nevrons from their dead feet, which links to the fact that Monaco and Noko are a mirror to the pets of the Descender family. Monaco even questions Painted Verso on whether his loyalty is his own choice or how he was created, which is very dark when you stop to think about it, especially after Monaco mentions he hates seeing expeditioners die and what Painted Verso is making him do. The sinister cave where the merchant is dead is also eerie. I believe that covers that in terms of art. Bar blacksmithing or forging as an art, of course, you as expeditioners have weapons, equipment like the climbing gear, and grapple, and then you meet these Nevrons who like to forge. Going back to objects of power, if you pay attention, real-world Renoir doesn't have cane, but painted Renoir does. It seems like Renoir steals it when the curator Gommages painted Renoir as you meet Renoir at the end, who happens to carry the same cane. It's the same as it makes the same sound, or at least that's why I assume. So why would Renoir steal the cane unless it's powerful in some way? Going back to the scene where Painted Renoir attacks at the beach, it seemed like none of the expedition are able to keep pace. It seemed like the cane has some kind of speed attribute attached to it, But how was Gustav then able to send painted Renoir flying with his overcharge attack? I don't think the power scaling could be that off, unless there is something I am missing. Also, if there were two canes and the curator didn't ask for it or painted Verso didn't want it, Luna would definitely have wanted it to research, to check if there was anything special about it. At least that's what I reckon. Now I'm bouncing between topics here, but my above analysis on art was also encouraged by animal statues, namely the fact that there is this panther-like creature as a statue in the manor. I'm not great at spotting animal species, so you will have to help me here with exactly what this is. But the Descendere are the only painters we see, so I assume this statue is a symbol for painters, so other animals must symbolize other arts, though what they look like exactly I don't know. Speaking of animals, we don't really see proper animals in Expedition 33. I wonder if there were any, or if the concept of animals was mirrored from the real world too. Going back to contrast, I believe there were the Nevrons. Despite being programmed for war, not all of them like it. Not just the white Nevrons, but others like the Dansu, the blacksmith, and the talking pot which talks philosophy. But the Nevrons actively contribute to the grand plan a whole lot more than the Axons, who seem to be giant powerful creatures, but their actual contributions are in stark contrast, as Lumia doesn't even know who they are and they don't actively make a move to change the situation. On the flip side, you also have a lazy ally, namely Esquier, who is said to be the strongest being in the canvas, yet also behaves in contrast, being a master of the art of napping. Did I mention that art form before, or should I even consider that an art form? I don't know. What I do know is how strong fear is in the canvas. Perhaps it is a reflection of Verso's fear in disappointing his parents' expectations, but most of the characters have something they fear. Mael has the fear of heights, Ciel of water, Gustav of no legacy left behind, Francois of abandonment wanting to see Claire again, Lune fears letting her parents' expectations down and failing her mission, mirroring Verso's fears. Sophie fears that nothing will change and hence doesn't want children. Monaco fears not being useful. Golgora fears for the future of the Gestrals. Painted Verso fears he is just an imitation and has an identity crisis, whereas Painted Renoir fears losing his family. It's all a game of fear, grief, and miscommunication. So let's get back on topic for the final push. So mirroring the real world, a lot of the characters and their traits seem like mirror copies of the Descendere family and the outside world. I think in my rush I've forgotten the biggest example of mirror images, namely the painted Descendere family and the Axons. However, it seems no matter the circumstances, even the painted copies do not harmonize well. In fact, Painted Verso is stuck in a cycle of being lied to and betrayed by Painted Renoir, so he has chosen to become the one who lies and betrays. Now I'm quoting the case where Painted Renoir claims Julie is Claire's creation and makes him do something non-reversible. Now Painted Verso has chosen to mirror the harshness of the world and ultimately plan its demise. Going back to Monaco, he has different masks for different situations, which mirrors Renoir's take on Verso, hence why the Mask Keeper exists. But Monaco also inherits Verso's love of trains, and the fact that Noko dies protecting Monaco could be a mirror to how Verso sacrificed himself to protect Alicia. Moving on to Mael and those around her, Emma, Gustav's sister, seems to fit the ideal of a mother. She is the head of a council as well, supports Mael in her goals and cares for her, and covers for her when she steals from the Expedition Academy. Now Gustav is a mirror of both Renoir and Verso, which is why Mael calls him a brother and a father. He would do anything to protect Mael, and like Verso, ends up sacrificing himself to protect her. Lune, I believe, is a reflection of Claire, burdened by responsibilities and has a cold personality outside of her inner circle, also waging a war, but against the paintress. Apprenticed early by her parents, so having no free time, she might have been the same as Claire, as the eldest or the one with the highest expectations when she was young. Not the eldest, I just remember. She had a sister, Stella, who was a gifted artist, but this also adds substance to my assumption there are more artists than just painters and writers, Because when Lune says this, Verso replies he is not the kind of artist his parents wanted him to be. He doesn't say painter, which suggests there are more disciplines out there in the real world too. Oddly, Lune also has a pet dog called Pat. Finally, CL. She seems to be the other side of Clear, the Sundry side, which is hidden, that cares, and the rebel that wants to stand on her own 2 feet. She uses the Sith, maybe as a metaphor for death, and she looks like Claire too. Potentially, she made her own attack so complicated, as honing her attack gave her a way to think of something else, so she threw herself into lesson prep and combat practice, similar to how Claire throws herself into war with the writers to forget. Unlike Claire and Verso, CL seems to live without a mask, which could be Verso's ideal for a bigger sister. And I believe that should be time to wrap this video up. I've really broken my back on this video, had a few issues with the gimbal. Hopefully it turned out fine, and on that note, adieu, and I will catch you in the next one. Just adding this, as I think I missed this. So dual meanings have power in this world. So you have twilight powers, the duality of day and night, light and darkness. On the monolith you can see the number 33 shine, regardless of time of day. Then you have fire powers, which offer burns, which is a game mechanic. So you've got burns on Elysia, you've got the fire at the manor, which is the cause of grief, and yet it's man's greatest invention, fire. Then you have void powers. There is a void within the Descendro family that they're all looking to fulfill, yet they are destroying the very last remnant left inside them, directly or indirectly, by the conflict they have. And then the duality comes in grief and love. You've got the drama of the Descendro family. The creation and destruction of the canvas hangs in the balance. And then you've got Lumiere celebrating the gommage, which is death itself, but they see it as a token of love. And on the flip side, you've got Renoir, who does the gommage out of love itself, which links into the final bit, flowers, which again represent life and death. If you go into the petals, you've got the white petals and the red petals. The white petals represent life, the red petals represent death. You've got the red and white tree. You see everyone during the gommage wearing red and white petals. It's a kind of embrace that they've accepted that death has come for them, and the whole of Lumiere prepares their whole life around this moment. So the gommage isn't just a gommage, it's a symbol of acceptance for Lumiere. And then you've got Gustav giving flowers to Sophie. So flowers aren't just that everyone dies and turns into flowers. If you look at the direct core of Lumiere, flowers are an integral part of it. So they're beauty on the continent, but they also represent danger. And I guess that's it. I just wanted to add that final segment in. Thanks then. Adieu.